Well, hello. Happy first Friday of 2023. Hope everybody's doing good. Happy everybody's safe. Happy Christmas and New Year's and all that fun stuff. We had fun with friends. Um, and interesting, I've run across a couple of my people that have had some issues with some trickery being pulled on them. So today's topic is 4 tricks to avoid. So I'm going to open up if I can get this material up and we'll get going on it. So, hey, I'm Travis Rohr with C3 Project Pros, and here are 4 tricks to avoid from bad contractors. And yes, there are some out there. So, where to begin? First, my belief. I'm a blue collar guy to the core, and I fundamentally believe that blue collar people are proud people that want to remedy mistakes and not dupe people. That being said, I've been proven wrong, and there are people out there that are just put in more effort trying to make it more difficult for people and trust and lack of professionalism. So I've had a disappointing couple weeks as far as stuff I've learned. Anyway, let's get into things that you can avoid. Let's talk about that. So my belief is, first of all, that to the core, I think that most, by and large, all blue collar people are fundamentally good, honest, hardworking people that just want to, please. How about that? So the first one that I like to call is cash and dash. And this is and this is typically more from a small contractor and those contractors who I call chucking a truck. So they have no credit lines. They have no means of carrying the job. They have no means of producing anything without payment up front. And so they will require a deposit. And then your crew doesn't show up as scheduled. So it might not be the same week, same day, whatever. But that's one thing to avoid with cash and dash. And I list here 2 types of contractors. So there's more than 2, but I'm going to talk about 2 specifically because that's probably who you're dealing with. One, the small guy chucking a truck, and that's just a guy with maybe handyman or whatever it is, just a solo dude, a solopreneur working by himself, out there getting it done. And then the other type is a guy that's grown up past that and has a few people working for him, maybe as a site supervisor, maybe as a project manager, something. But anyway, the small guy typically doesn't have the means necessary to fundamentally run his business correctly, where the mid-level guy's got that part figured out, and he might be a little bit more expensive. My golden rule: never let the money get ahead of the work. If you're going to do a payment, if you're going to do a deposit, it is going to be for materials or something that you own. So if they get ahead, so if something happens and they go away, well, you still own the product. So what I do say is, I don't care. No way, no how. Do not pay labor up front. No way. If you can't come up with a draw schedule and work for a week or so without getting paid, then you got the wrong person. I'll just say it like that. So first one is cash and dash. Next thing to avoid: estimate change. And this is common in renovations, especially when it comes to rot repair. Well, first of all, let's say common in renovation. And the reason I say that is because we don't have x-ray vision. We can't see what's behind the walls. I mean, especially in rot repair, I've seen a couple lately where you have a really soft floor. And so floor rot, maybe some joists, subfloor, of course, and you get in there and as I refer to it, the cancer has spread beyond what you could feel. And so you need to go further in your scope of work, and then you'd have to go back and do an estimate change or an estimate revision. One thing to do is include a demo or an exploration budget. And that way it's like, hey, we have this idea what the scope of work is, but we're going to allocate this much money towards, and it could be a contingency fund, if you will, to say, okay, well, let's see how this is working out, see how far we have to go. And once you do an exploration, open up walls, open up the floor, open up whatever you have to do to see the extent of the damage. Well, then you can revise your overall scope, bid, firm it up, so at least there's a known deal. And then once your exploration budget is done, again, you're going to get a revised scope and budget and schedule. So see how that trickles down. And then you're going to want to contact everybody downstream to make sure that nobody's showing up when you're making a correction. So that's the second one, estimate change. Third, material swapping. I don't know how to say it any nicer than this. This one simply just pisses me off. If this happens, that's just pure unadulterated dishonesty, um, and thievery. Not all materials are created equal. So when you are specing your product, and I'm talking assuming that you are running your own project, and say you're, whether it's deck boards, whether it's siding, whether it's windows, whether it's doors, I don't care what the product is. If you spec something with a name and a nomenclature and, like, a model number or whatever, and a similar looking product that isn't the same, they can likely procure that for much less money. But unless they present that to you as an option, as like, hey, I can bring this in and save you some money, and if that's not the case, then they're just trying to take that difference from you. So make sure that when you are listing out your specifications in your scope, that you're very, very particular about what product is going to be used, and then just simply double check, whether it's double checking via the invoices, order forms, or the product that's actually sitting on site, and just make sure it matches up. So if you are getting secondhand, substandard replacement products without being uh, informed, without being advised of material difference, cost differences, um, it that's it's just that's just flat out deception. Anyway, that's my stance on that. Fourth, project drag on. This is what happens when you have contractors that have too many projects going on. So they're trying to juggle a lot of work, and they're trying to please a lot of people. So they're going to show up here for a bit, show up there for a bit, instead of finishing and closing out jobs properly. They just don't know how to manage their time. They also have poor cash management. So they're going to jump from job to job to job, what I call spiking it, um, to take their draws to build up their cash flow so they can meet something. Again, that does not breed efficiency. It breeds inefficiencies and project drag on. Poor job scheduling. Maybe what we talked about before, where they had some floor rot and they got in there and the scope became much bigger than they thought. Well, guess what? If you don't inform the people downstream, and they show up on a day and you're not completely ready for them, well, that drag on is going to affect you negatively, because you just lost your slot. And then what's it going to take to get back in that person's schedule? And then, of course, this is accountability in both parties. So when I'm talking about that is, if you're running your own job and there is a delay at some point, you goes back to downstream communication. And once you have your project plan in place, literally it's your job as a communicator, regardless of what scope or task you're physically doing. And then, of course, you have some options that you can do on this. If depending on how you feel about this, there's two options, one for each party, because it's got to be fair both ways. One is a penalty, and it's called liquidated damages, and the other is a bonus, and that's called early completion. So those two things would happen is, if you're in the middle of a project, and let's just say you have an interest rate lock and you have to have a certain point done, or you're expecting to, I can try to dream up a scenario, maybe open up a building for a conference or something, and it just doesn't get ready, and they have to do an alternate one that's going to cost a bunch of money. I mean, I know I'm speculating like crazy, but at the end of the day, it's like, if you don't get the job done by this date, and not substantial completion, that's a topic for another day. But if you don't get done by this date, you pick the number, 50, 100, $500 a day penalty for not being done on time. And which goes back to the communication downstream. If scope expands and schedule expands, you can do no cost change orders and issue a time change order, meaning, well, this scope add-on not only created this much additional work, it's going to take this much additional time. That could be a result of weather. If you get a job shut down because of snow, because of a hurricane, because of a tornado, because of a flood, I mean, lions, tigers, and bears, oh my, it doesn't matter. But whatever the case may be, make sure that if you are tied to a firm date with liquidated damages, that you are accounting for indecision, you're accounting for weather disasters, you're accounting for, we've had severe product supply issues that are really out of the hands of builders, that we get a lot of, we get a lot of flack over, but some of that stuff is simply out of our hands. So my point to that is if you experience these delays and that time frame, like, I'll go back to the simple thing, like, well, it's going to take me 3 more days to do this. You can tack 3 days on as a time change order to the completion date. Likewise, the early completion, if you were able to get into your building early, there should be a bonus for that as well. So that it does go both ways. So next, we're going to do a little recap. Oh, sorry. And then number 5, this, earning the respect of your team. I can't tell you how important that is. I'm one of my students happens to be local, and I've stopped by, and I don't know how many different ways I can tell him that it's just hard working and piles of garbage. And anyway, there was a couple of his subs on site, and he and I were talking. The subs overheard it and commented that they would really appreciate if the place were cleaned up. So be prepared, clean your site. How would you like to work? Do you want to crawl around in debris, or we just want to be able to flow and do your thing? If you're running your own project and you're buying stuff, make sure you have the supplies ready, labeled in the room that they go. I'm speaking of like light fixtures or plumbing fixtures, because you might have a stack of plumbing fixtures there and you have a different shower trim for each thing or different faucets for each bathroom. Just make sure they're labeled and maybe even put in the same room where they go. And then do your part on time. Always do not be late. Do not deviate. If you say you're going to be ready, don't deviate. And like I said, communicate. That's the best you can do. Parties coming up, downstream, schedule adjustments, anything. If you need help, ask. It's not that hard. Anyway, so that's earning the respect of your team is going to make your project go flow nicely. So we'll recap the 4 tricks that I've seen. Cash and dash, that's when you give them money up front and they don't show up as promised, which causes you long-term downstream effects. Estimate changes, that's ways to avoid that again, or a demo or an exploration estimate, and using that money as a contingency line item. Material swapping, I think I covered that one pretty good. I'm sorry, that one really pisses me off. That's just criminal in my mind. Project drag on, that's just poor management, period, from subs that you choose. So that comes back to your vetting of them early on. And then, really earn the respect of your team. Do your part, do it always, do it consistently, and you will have long-term repeat benefits from that. So then I'm going to go, hey, if you would like some more exclusive content, there's my flow code. Please book a call with me. I'm happy to answer all your questions. I actually really enjoy it when I start getting the questions coming in. I have a couple fun ones coming up. One of them is talking about home inspections, and I have that from not only a client perspective, but I also have it from a personal perspective that I'll share with you in a couple weeks. So I look forward to seeing you all. And as was it Chuck Woolery said, seeing 2 and 2. Anyway, I hope you have a great Friday, and we'll see you again. Thank you.